And welcome back to the Daily Wrap. Well, sometimes the media writes some pretty silly stuff, don't I know? A couple of hours ago, Reuters reported on a potential Iran deal, writing, and we quote, "Major powers in Iran were closer to a preliminary accord on Tehran's nuclear program as marathon talks ran into Wednesday. But we're stuck over key details such as lifting UN sanctions and Iran's future atomic research." Oh, so basically the only thing keeping a deal from happening was all the important stuff. Reuters. I just have respect for them. And they're right. We're no closer to a deal that will limit Iran's nuclear program while easing economic sanctions. Secretary of State John Kerry has agreed to one more day of negotiating with Iran. But should he have? This morning on MSNBC, former Democratic Governor Howard Dean shocked many when he said this.
I think Obama is right to try to get a deal. I'm worried about the way these negotiations have gone, and I think that Joe is right, probably a step away from the table and saying, okay, you know, you're not backing off on sending you the uranium to Russia, and you're not, and we'll get rid of the sanctions at our own pace.
So Mr. Dean thinks we should walk away. White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest, who makes a daily appearance on this show, today was asked if Secretary of State John Kerry was also prepared to walk away.
I think our approach to these conversations hasn't changed, which is that as long as we are in a position of convening serious talks that are making progress, that we would not arbitrarily or abruptly end them. But if we are in a situation where we sense that the talks have stalled, then yes, the United States and the international community is prepared to walk away.
And as you may imagine, Israel continues to be concerned with the pending deals. Today, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, while meeting with Speaker of the House John Boehner, responded to a prominent Iranian militant member who isn't even a part of the government after he said, quote, "The destruction of Israel is non-negotiable," unquote.
Iran must stop its aggression in the region, stop its terrorism throughout the world, and stop its threats to annihilate Israel. That should be non-negotiable. And that's the deal that the world powers must insist upon.
Okay, so should we walk away? Are world powers on the verge of selling out Israel and stability in the Middle East? Let's bring back to the wrap former senior analyst for the Department of Defense and resident scholar at the American Enterprise Institute. Matt McGinnis joins us. Matt, what's your take on all this?
Well, I'm actually happy to hear that we're bringing back talk of walking away. I mean, this is something that has been missing for a while. Because I think we underestimate how much the Iranians want a deal, and we overestimate, how much that we're entrapped and committed in these talks, and it's just we can't imagine walking away. I think that there needs to be some sober reality that if we're not getting a deal that we like, that's going to give us confidence that Iran is not going to pursue a nuclear weapon, we need to be willing to kind of just stand up and take a break.
Matt, it's Heather Hansen. I think one of the things that we often forget, at least I did, is that you talked about how much the Iranians want a deal. They're getting $700 million a month now that the sanctions have been lifted since 2013. Isn't there a big driving factor here and any desperation that they have in the fact that we have sanctions that we can put back down so that they stop getting this money back?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's not just the money that's coming in right now. It's about the amount of, enormous amounts of money that could come in after a deal. Iran it's not just about the sanctions that are hurting them right now. It's also about the low oil prices, but it's also these very severe economic structural problems that Iran is facing. And President Rouhani recognizes, and I think the Supreme Leader does as well, that they've got to have some relief if they're going to be able to have anything significant develop on their economic front for the next 5 to 10 years. So that we really need to remember our leverage here.
Hey Matt, it's Rick Unger. The past few days, what we've really been hearing more about is this notion of a preliminary deal with everything continuing for another 3 months. Won't it be a little bit embarrassing even if we keep going another day or two and they announce a deal and it's just a preliminary deal that doesn't hit the big notes? That's not going to be good for anybody, is it?
No, and I think we're in this interesting period where the real deadline is when Congress comes back from the Easter recess, April 13th, when Senators Corker, Kirk, and others are going to be looking at potential sanctions legislation or other legislation that will potentially affect the Iranian deal. So I think that's actually what's driving the U.S. is that they want to bring something to Congress, and that's why they're willing to talk for days on end past 31 March. The real issue is that the Iranians know that the deadline is June 30th. That's what they're working with. So they're continuing to kind of, grandstand, take us to the brink as much as they can to get a better deal.
Hey, Matt, it's Joe Concha again. I see this in sports all the time whenever there's a strike or a work stoppage. And there's a deadline and then there's the real deadline, just like you talked about. Are you surprised that we even revealed that there was a March 31st deadline when we sure as hell knew that it never was going to happen?
Yeah, I was kind of surprised when we did this originally because knowing the Iranians, they're going to want to pick through all the details at the end. And certainly the Supreme Leader has said this many times that he doesn't like the idea of a two-phase deal. And I kind of wondered as soon as the Ayatollah was coming out, complaining about this, I just knew that we were going to end up just having to focus on a June deadline. And so this was a complication that the administration, because they're not working well with Congress, kind of put themselves in a bind until Congress is feeling more comfortable with where the administration is going on the negotiations.
Matt, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate your input, and I would imagine we may be speaking to you again very soon to talk about the real deadline, which, as you said, happens when Congress comes back. Thanks so much. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, panel, lightning round time. Lisa, what are the chances of us not getting a deal tomorrow, because it ain't happening, but a deal ever?
I'm not sure, but again, listening to this and listening to what Matt had to say, it makes us wonder what the framework actually means. What this March 30th deadline or March 31st or April 1st deadline, what can be accomplished by that? And when they're clearly looking, Iran is clearly looking at the June deadline. Better to have a deal, obviously, than no deal, but there's so many points that are not being addressed right now.
Heather, is it better to have a bad deal than no deal?
No.
Okay.
No deal is definitely, I think we're headed towards no deal. The fact that Russia, China, and France have gone home and left their aides behind certainly lends itself to what are we doing? And what are we going to be the only one left at the table? Please come back.
Who's the superpower in the room,
right? Exactly. It really is. And it's not just embarrassing. It is damaging to our relationship with our allies who are not just Israel, but Saudi Arabia as well, who are really concerned.
It's starting to look like John Kerry has developed an affinity towards Swiss chocolates and just doesn't want to leave the country. Look, I'm kind of with the boys this morning. As somebody who's negotiated a lot of deals, you got to walk at some point.
Yeah.
And on that note, coming up next, Hillary is taking a hit in the polls. Could her presidential aspirations be disappearing? This is the Daily Wrap, only on Newsmax.